Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining myself, Alex Chisnall, here at the Festival of Enterprise. And I've got Jonathan Bowman-Perks with me, and we're going to be talking inspiring leadership in challenging times. Lessons from hundreds of CEOs, generals, and SAS leaders in 2019 and 2020. Good morning to you, Jonathan.
Good morning, Alex. It's great to be. Oh, we're getting terrible feedback. Are you getting that feedback?
Yeah, you might have another screen open that you might need to shut down. That's what normally happens when we get the feedback. So just double check. Sounded okay then when you spoke?
Yeah, I think it's okay now.
I can hear it.
Oh, it's a bit of feedback.
Yeah. Give us 2 seconds, folks. I'll just get Jonathan to shut down any of the tabs that he's got open, maybe. It's normally just another tab that's open.
Is it?
We get the feedback, yeah.
Well, so I stop sharing for now. Let's see if that makes a difference. No, I've never had this before.
No. Yeah, just check to see if you've got another tab open for here, Festival of Enterprise.
Okay,
or anything else in the audio.
So it's my dog howling.
Dog doesn't like it.
Okay. Is that better?
Okay, so let's see. Let me do.
I think two sides.
Okay, so once again,
Okay, let's try again.
Going to thank you all once again for joining us. I am here in Poole in Dorset, which yesterday was beautiful and sunny, and today is, well, I think we've bypassed autumn and gone straight to winter. So all the lights are on. It's dark. It's foggy. It's gloomy. Whereabouts are you, Jonathan? And what's the weather like there?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. I'm in Lincolnshire, and yeah, we've had the rain, but I've just come back from God's country, as you call it, Wales, where I've been in Snowdonia, walking in the hills, and the weather was lovely.
Awesome. Okay, so those of you who signed up for the webinar, you're going to know what we're going to be talking about already. Jonathan Bowman-Perks, MBA, good friend of mine, is a global leadership coach to chairmen, CEOs, and executive teams. He's got 20 years in business and 20 years in the military, and it's taught him to support leaders to cope with crisis and challenges for themselves and their teams. And never has there been a bigger crisis, I think. I mean, have you known a time in your life, Jonathan, when there's been a more challenging time in your life, personally, business-wise, globally?
No, I think all sort of things tend to happen, and they sometimes, it's like a multiple car pileup, that you not just have one event. So, you know, when I was planning the end of 2019, thought it's fine, 2020, looking forward to it. And then, of course, you know, March, the car crash happens. But not only that, then, you know, you have other things in your life goes on. You know, our old dog died. Then we've been caring for my mother-in-law, and sadly, a few days ago, she died too, and we've got the funeral coming up. So various events happen to you. And life, as John Lennon said, is what happens when you're making other plans. Indeed.
Yeah. Well, sorry for your losses as well. And moving forward to today's webinar, thank you for those of you who've joined us live on this Crowdcast platform today. We're also streaming live on different social media. So you might be joining us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. So I welcome you as well. If you would like to join us on this platform to make it a bit more interactive, then simply go to festivalofenterprise.co.uk and you can click the link and join us. But in the meantime, I'm going to hand over to Jonathan to talk about today's webinar, Inspiring Leadership in Challenging Times. Jonathan, over to you.
Thanks very much indeed, Alex. So welcome, everybody. It's lovely to be with you. If you hear some interesting squeaky toy noises in the background, I have a 14-week-old working Cocker Spaniel who's just nearby here and entertaining himself. So don't be put off by that. Archie is part of the team. Yeah, I've been very fortunate that with the help of Alex, he got me into podcasting. And I started, I think, Alex, back in October. And I'm now on episode 85 of the Inspiring Leadership podcast series. And my thanks go to Alex. Without him, I wouldn't have been able to know how to do it and learn all the skills and the technology behind it. So that's been invaluable. And during that time, as I put up there, I've interviewed hundreds of CEOs, generals, and pretty interested in special forces, SAS leaders, last year and in this year. And I thought it'd be useful to those entrepreneurs and leaders who are listening to share some of the insights, some of my favorite moments from them, some of the favorite quotes. And in the leadership coaching that I do with entrepreneurs and CEOs and their teams, these have been practical tips and maybe quotes that are very relevant, particularly in the kind of crisis we've got going on today, because it's not going to just be over in a few months' time. We're going to have to adapt ourselves. This is a new way of working, and it's going to be with us for years to come. So those scientists that I work with, they say that like flu, coronavirus will be with us for years to come, and vaccines will be needed every year, just like you have the flu jab. And I've been offered the flu jab, being a man of 58, I've been offered the flu jab this year. But things are going to be different, and we've got to adapt to it. We've got to pivot, that favorite word they use. So let me take you through a few of the slides and the thoughts we have. The next one, let's see how I can move on. How do we do this? Just trying to move on, Alex.
Yeah, I'll let you know. Just hit your arrow, and I'll let you know when you're onto the.
Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Is there a way on this? It doesn't seem to.
If you just use your slides and literally just use your cursor as the arrow to move it forward on your laptop there, it will move this forward here as well.
Yeah, it hasn't actually. Not sure why it's not moving on. Let's have a look. I'm trying all the keys. Let's try that.
Unless you want to minimize it, and where you've got the tabs on the left-hand side, then you could then just move your arrow over and click on those.
Just bear with me a second.
That's okay. Yeah, see if you can do that. Maybe just minimize the screen, the slides, like you did before, where you've got them on the left-hand side as well, and you can see what's coming up, and maybe click on that manually if your arrows aren't moving it forward.
No, for some reason it doesn't allow me to. The keys are not responding.
Okay.
Life is what happens when you're making other plans, isn't it?
Indeed. It is. See how you go. Bear with us, folks. A couple of technical challenges, but we will get there. So any questions? I should give you a bit of housekeeping, folks.
Let's stop sharing for a second and then you go back.
Okay, yeah, so if you can bring them back. But any questions, folks, use the chat box on the right-hand side, where Nigel and Farouk have introduced themselves today. So thank you for joining us, chaps. And we're just getting started here. Jonathan's just bringing up his slides, and there we go. And just see if you can move forward. Yeah, we can see those.
Just I'm just not sure why it's not moving on.
No problem. If not, I'm just bringing your slides up myself.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to do that because for some reason it allows me to display it, but it doesn't allow me to interact with it. Okay,
so I've got your slides here. I'm just going to switch it. Thanks for bearing with us, folks. I'm just going to do it myself instead. So let me move that screen over there. There we go. That one there. And I'm just going to share my screen now. instead. Let's bring up an application window. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to share this. So,
good.
Okay, so I'm just going to enlarge it to bring that up for you. Present. There we go. And I'll just move them forward for you, Jonathan.
Thanks,
so
Alex.
next slide is there.
So yeah, just as Alex said, as you've got questions, please send them in. And if they appear on the screen, and I can see them, at the moment we just got the presentation, but if they appear on the screen, I'll deal with them, but I'll probably deal with them at the end of this presentation. I'll go through this now. Okay, next slide, please, Alex. The 3 R's. This was my personal trainer, who's a monster of a guy from South Africa, and played for Tottenham as a footballer. His father brought him up in a hard township in South Africa. And he said the 3 R's, lad, are really important. Respect. You've got to always respect a person. You might have a difference of opinion with their viewpoint, their religion, their faith, their background, what they believe in, but always treat the others with respect. Responsibility, take personal responsibility. And there's a lovely thing to look on the internet called the ladder of accountability, which takes you from being proactively accountable to being unaccountable and reactive, taking personal accountability and responsibility for your own life, and then the resilience. As we're seeing here, whether it be the presentation wouldn't respond to me or whatever, just ride with it. You know, you're going to have problems. Breathe, focus on it, and keep moving forward. I'm listening to Sea Stories by Admiral William McRaven, who was a Special Forces guy who did a great video, well worth watching, called First Make Your Bed. And he said, if you begin the day with at least making your bed, at least you come back at the end of the day, if it's been an awful day, with a bed that's been made, that you made. It's the first thing of the day. Begin by making your bed. Okay, so that was from Ferdinand in South Africa. Next slide, please, Alex. In my 20 years in the army, I read a lot around history, military history, and as someone who's dyslexic, I probably listen to about 90 audiobooks a year. And I was very interested in General von Schlieffen and General von Moltke, who planned the invasion of Belgium and France in the First World War. And General von Moltke said, failing to plan is planning to fail. No plan survives the first meeting with the enemy. So do get on and do some planning, but be prepared when you had your plans for 2020 in February. Unless you were very far-sighted, you didn't see the enemy that was coming, which was COVID-19, and the impact it's going to have on you. And so you've got to be prepared for that. Can we have the next slide, please, Alex?
Sure thing.
Thanks. James Cameron, who served with me in the Army, we're at Staff College together. He's the Vice President for Leadership for Walmart, which has hundreds of thousands of people who work from around the world. And he said this very interesting quote, "I believe I can do anything my boss believes that I can do." So as someone who is in charge of something, or if you have anybody who works with you or for you or in partnership with you, remember this whole concept about what you believe in someone, your expectations of them becomes the reality. So if the boss believes you can do it, you probably can do it. So I believe I can do anything my boss believes I can do. I love that one. Next slide, please, Alex. James, or Jim, as we call him, Richardson, on the interview, he served with the American forces in Iraq, and also was a 100-meter sprinter, a rugby player, and a very good leader in the Royal Signals. And I knew him then. And now he runs the Hague Housing Trust. He's the CEO of a charity for veterans who've fallen on hard times, to give them some housing and make sure they're not on the streets. And the point that he said is that we often, in busy times, we ramp up to 100%. We give our all to the job. But this has been going on for 6 or 7 months now. You cannot sustain it at that level. So you have to make time for recovery and discovery, to recover and discover what really matters, make strategic time to think. And the best leaders are the ones that know that they actually drop down to perhaps 85% of capacity for themselves and their team. Make sure, like I've just done with my wife and our daughter and her fiance, we went away and we had a few days in the Welsh mountains in Snowdonia, walking with our dogs and just having a lovely time, relaxed. Because you then can come back with some new insights, and it's in those moments when you haven't got things going on, which you think of things and you discover ideas to better handle your business, or you maybe come up with entrepreneurial ideas that no one else has come. And that's the time to think. If you're busy, dead, you're not going to be recovering properly. And make sure you have this time where you drop down to 85% of capacity, recover, take the weekend off, and then you can come back in at a time of a crisis and work at 100%, but don't work at it all the time. Next slide, please, Alex. As I say, reading about Admiral William McRaven and a number of other Navy SEALs and guys who do sort of ultra marathons and things, one of the things that is very key is that calm is contagious. Equally, fear is contagious. So just before you even go into an event, just to do some breathing. And the breathing is 4 breaths in, hold for 7, out for 8. In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. And even the Navy SEALs, Special Forces, or the SAS guys I know, before they're going into a life-threatening situation, they just go through a few deep, calming breaths. They tend to, the US Marines use the square. 4, breathing in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4, in for 4. That just gets you in a balanced state. But that 4, 7, 8 is where you fire up the parasympathetic nervous system and you calm yourself down. And it's particularly good if you're trying to sleep or you're trying to relax yourself before a key meeting or when you're on a video call. Thanks, Alex. Next slide, please. Very good TED talk by Simon Sinek called Why. And the people who know how will always work for the people who know why. If you've got a clear burning why, if you have a sense of purpose to your entrepreneurial business or to what you're doing, then people will follow you. And often any of you who, I've got 4 children who are now aged 25 to 29, and they've all got their own jobs. But as they were growing up, I remember that the question they'd often ask me as a father is, why? Why? And if you cannot explain the why to people, they're unlikely to give their all to you. So make sure that if you're going to be the person who's leading it, you've got a clear burning why. One of the leaders I'm very fortunate to know and have worked with over the last 2 or 3 years is an entrepreneur called Matt Oppenheimer. And I interviewed Matt on my Inspiring Leadership's podcast series. Well worth listening to him. He set up a company called Remitly. It's done so well that Jeff Bezos of Amazon fame has backed him, and his company is now a unicorn. It's been valued at 1.5 billion from the investment that's been made in it, and it allows immigrants to send their money back home to their families just with the use of the iPhone on an app. So a very impressive entrepreneur. And he was very clear on his why. He even did a video about why he set up Remitly, R-E-M-I-T-L-Y, why he set it up. He was in the slums of Kenya doing some work out there, and he realized there had to be a better system than the very expensive Western Union, where people had to go to an office and hand over money and get a slip and this kind of stuff. Now it can all be done online. Next slide, please, Alex. You're going to have a lot of problems, and Alex and I have talked through the challenges that we faced as our businesses went through a complete change during this time of the last 5 months. Indeed, with technology, we've moved on in 5 months further than we were planning to move in 5 years. And you're going to have a lot of problems. One of the guys that I was interviewing, he said that he had a major crisis. He was about to lose his job. Things weren't going well. His boss was questioning him. And a friend of his said, just remember that adversity introduces you to yourself. Make sure you like what you find, because it's in those most difficult moments. Anybody can do well. Anybody can come across as a strong, inspiring leader in good times, but it's adversity that introduces you to yourself. And this is where some of the other tips and techniques and the philosophy of Stoicism, which I'll come on to later, really has helped leaders that I've been with. I particularly think of the vice president in Expedia, an organization that had 250 million turnover a day, went to zero at one stage, with 30,000 people around the world working for them. And the guy that I was working with, he said that it's actually the Stoic philosophy and this ability to cope with challenges that really helped him through that. Next slide, please, Alex. I'm very fond of Nelson Mandela and read his book. I think it's The Long Road to Freedom. But I just find his quotes, that he took from Marianne Williamson, our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond imagination. It's our light and not our darkness that most frightens us. We have to ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? And he said, I don't lose, I either win or I learn. And even when you win, you learn something. And in the military, we had this maxim of after action review. When we'd done any operation or we'd done anything, we reviewed it afterwards. I work with LinkedIn as well. And my colleague who does the LinkedIn live session with me every Tuesday at 5, if you want to come and join us, we have interesting leaders on LinkedIn Live, Ben Atkinson. He and I found that in LinkedIn, they have after event reviews, we call them after action reviews, where they reviewed whether it went well or went badly, and then using an app on their phone, they can give feedback on their colleagues, which forms part of their ongoing appraisal. So you learn from when you win and you learn from when you lose or you fail, but you just see it as a learning opportunity or a teachable moment. When something goes wrong, don't hammer the member of staff who got it wrong. Ask them what they learned and what they're going to do to resolve it. See it as a teachable moment. Next slide, please, Alex. Failure is part of life that we have little choice over. Learning from failure, on the other hand, is optional. So things won't work out the way that you want them to. Make sure that you learn from them and you don't repeat the same error. To make an error is human, but to make the same error again and again, that's foolish. So if you've got a member of staff who keeps making the same mistake, fool on you. If they're making the mistake once, fool on them. But don't let someone get away with the same mistake again and again and not being prepared to learn. Next slide, please, Alex. So in the leaders that I talked to, 3 themes came up. Firstly, their definition of what leadership is about, what leaders do. One of them and a few of them said, leaders create the conditions for a team to succeed, and the leader removes the obstacles for their team. I love that. The other one is that they're sense makers, they're meaning makers. They make sense of what's going on. This is the why. And the third one is that they're storytellers with emotion. That's emotion with an energy and an empathy attached to it. Anybody can give you some facts, but if you tell a story, and we're humans, we love stories. This is how our ancestors passed on information from generation to generation. They told stories and people remember those stories. So be someone who is not boring, but can tell a succinct, interesting story with emotion attached to it. So people feel it viscerally. Next slide, please, Alex. I love this one from Jack Welch. If the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, then the end is near. Now that could be for an organization or for an individual, but you've got to be prepared to move with the changes. You've got to adapt it. This is probably in our lives some of the biggest changes that are required at the moment, and you have got to keep nimble, and you've got to have what we call tempo. And in the military, when I was commanding 140 men and 14 armored vehicles, we were doing live firing practice in Canada on the prairie, and we'd be moving at 40 kilometers an hour, which in an armored vehicle is very fast, particularly over rough ground when you're really bouncing along. And you had to move from going in that direction at speed to switching and going to a different direction at speed when you met the enemy and you were either engaging with them or getting away from them. And that is called tempo, where you can keep it without losing much momentum. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to have tempo. Next slide, please, Alex. Mindset is a key to your success in these times of difficulty as an entrepreneur or as a leader. And there's two views. And I found it from, just trying to think of the leader who talked about this, turn the ship around, David Marquet, Admiral David Marquet, another naval admiral. Brilliant. And Leadership is Language, I think is his book this comes from. He talks about the most successful leaders have a don't have a be good mindset, where the be good mindset is where you've got to show I'm good. I've got to hang on to that. I've got to prove, next line down, that I'm right. I've got to prove I'm right. I've got to show them how good I am. It's much healthier to have a get better mindset or an This came up a lot about how you handle bad news. Bad news never gets better with age. Do not avoid a difficult situation. Turn into it and face it and deal with it. And the reason we have to admit mistakes early as a leader, and the finest leaders have the three hums: humility, humanity, and a bit of humor as well. The reason you got to admit it early, the cost of mistakes compound over time. The consequences for you are smaller when you deal with it early, and you create trust by admitting that you've made a mistake. Because if you admit you make a mistake, then the people who work for you, they can admit it too. And somebody else can say, well, actually, I've got a solution, however junior they might be, because the leader has the courage to admit they've made a mistake. So don't hide bad news. Next slide, please, Alex. This is Major General Jonathan Shaw, Director of Special Forces, a number of tours with the SAS, very fine leader. And he said, good ideas have value, not rank. Argue with the idea, not with the person. And so don't get hung up on the rank of the person who had the idea and whether it's a good idea or not. Some people call it hippo, the highest paid person's opinion, and that they wait till the hippo speaks and then they all agree with the hippo. That's not the way to do it. The hippo's got to speak last, because otherwise he or she will influence the conversation in the wrong direction. And he has a view that leadership is getting people to do what you want them to do because they want to do it. Next slide, please, Alex. Back to this theme of purpose, meaning and purpose, and your why. Nietzsche, and there's that very good book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He whose life has a clear, burning why can bear with any how. So if you've got that why, then you can cope with all that's thrown at you and find a way to get your entrepreneurial idea out there and to lead your organization through this challenging time. Next slide, please, Alex. Yeah, I said that this is, I hope this resonates for you, Alex. It's not a sprint. It's not even a marathon, it's a triathlon. So any of you who've done it, as I do, to raise money for our charity, the Inspiring Leadership Trust, where my wife is the CEO of it, and we help vulnerable girls who've gone through abuse, mental health issues, modern day slavery, trafficking, that kind of stuff. We raise money for it throughout this UK and abroad. That it's like a triathlon. You get in the water. I remember doing the Virgin triathlon. And I was in the water. It was filthy water. You were treading water, ready to go. You're not sure when it's going to start. And suddenly it's off, and you're swimming forward, but people are piling over you, which is what happened really at the beginning of this crisis. People were steaming over you. And thank you very much. It's nice to see you. And that's Leanne very kindly giving me a cup of tea to keep me going. Thanks, Leanne. And it was a battleground. And then you go round this buoy and you come back, and then you think, I've been around here before, and you see Groundhog Day, you go around again and then again. And this is often what's happening in this crisis at the moment, this pandemic. And then the next phase is, of course, you stagger out of the water and you've got to adapt and you've got to change because you're wet and you're ripping off your wetsuit, and you then got to get onto a bike and you can hardly walk, and you set off. And of course, I'd pushed myself too hard. I'd done what many people have done, given it 100% in the first month or two of the crisis. And when I got on the bike, I was shattered, and people were passing me by and I couldn't keep up. And I had to really get myself back into sync, but I was much slower. But I didn't know how long it was. And again, you're going round these loops again and again and again. And then you get off the bike and then you transitioned again. It's another pivot point, transition again, and you're on the run. But in this case, you don't know how long the run is for. But getting off a bike and being on a run is hard. So this crisis is like a triathlon, not a sprint. Next slide, please, Alex. Self-deception is the enemy. It is impossible for a person to begin to learn what he thinks he already knows. Epictetus. Many of you, if you're like me, and at times you get arrogant and you think you already know it all, you're not going to be listening. Do not deceive yourself. That's the biggest enemy that you'll come across. You can easily spot it in others, but can you spot it in yourself? Have you got someone who's going to whisper in your ear? Stop being arrogant. Listen. Really listen to what they say. Next slide, please, Alex. Just got about 6 slides left. I love this one from Barack Obama. Change will not happen if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. Get on and make it happen. It's up to us. If it's going to be, it's up to me. Next slide, please, Alex. Very keen on Stoic philosophy, and the key tenet is you don't control what happens to you in life, like COVID-19, but you do control how you respond to it. A lot of people are complaining, that relations, like my mother-in-law who died, it's not fair. The government's to blame for why she died of COVID-19. Someone should pay. You don't have control over that, but you do control how you respond. Rather than looking to blame everybody else, get on and do something with it. Next slide, please. So Epictetus, another one of the great Stoics, it's not things that upset us, but our judgment about things. So be careful about your judgment and be careful about your attachment to things. Don't be attached to things. Okay, next slide, please, Alex. We're almost there. Humility. I talked about the 3 hums: humility, humanity, and humor. Humility is not denying your strengths. It's being honest about your weaknesses. So don't play down your strengths. By all means, be proud of those, but be honest about your weaknesses, because if you are appropriately vulnerable, then others can be so too, and you create a high trust environment. And that's from John Maxwell, great books that he writes on leadership. Next slide, please, Alex. Meaning and purpose, the 2 most important days in your life: the day you were born and the day you found out why. And that's from Mark Twain. So do you know why you were born? And if you don't, spend some time thinking about it, work with a coach, find someone who will really get you to think about your meaning and your purpose, why you're on the planet, why you're doing what you're doing, and what ideas you have to lead others in difficult times. And I think, Alex, that's the last slide. Let's put on to Q&A if we can.
Boom.
Yeah, there we go. Boom. Okay,
right.
So we caught up with ourselves. And thanks for people's patience at the beginning as we overcame technology. I'm really open to questions. And maybe if we change the screen so the questions can pop up and I can see those, Alex, so that'd be all right.
Yeah, sure. Let me just bring myself back there as well. So thank you very much for that. Jonathan, got your information there. So you're coming up to 100 episodes of your podcast as well. What month is that going to be? Have you worked out?
Yeah, I've worked it out. And funny enough, episode 100, I'm going to be interviewing my own wife, Leigh, about her charity.
See, that's what you said.
You said. I had Dave Hudson, the SAS officer, did episode 50. But episode 100 will be on Thursday, the 29th of October.
Wow, so not long. Okay.
Really looking forward to that. So, Alex, over to you. Really, if there has been any questions come up, would you call them out, and I'll respond as best I can. If there have been no questions, you and I can chat and have a cup of tea.
Yeah, absolutely. Some great quotes there. So I've been busy posting these up on our Instagram feed whilst we've been going through this as well. So I've been busy posting them all. I haven't got all of the slides, but I posted loads up. Some great selections in there, etc. Nigel's posted up straight away. Many insights require the right culture, e.g., good idea, have value, not rank, etc. Any insights here? So I'll pass that straight over to you, Jonathan.
So it was a question about culture. Was that right, Harry?
Yeah, he says many insights require the right culture.
Yeah.
Example, good ideas have value, not rank, as you mentioned. Any insights here as well?
Yes, particularly now we're in a virtual world, and remote first is going to be the way that most businesses are going to be working. I do think that the world of the office will be very different. It'll be a place people will come to for a briefing, maybe some large open plan area where they can have social distancing, bring the laptop, settle down to a large round table, lots of space from others. And so the culture is going to be harder to establish with new hires when you're virtual. And if you can, finding some way to meet with people will be key. But the culture is, the tone is set by the top. And never underestimate, as the leader, your impact on others and how it can be good or bad. So culture, the tone is set by the top, Nigel, definitely, is my view. And it's culture eats strategy for breakfast is that famous and very powerful quote. So culture is all. Culture is everything.
Thank you for that. Just put your slides up there, actually. Might be a good point for me just to sit. So Farouk says, another question. Thank you, everybody, for posting these up. I was just going to social media to see the streaming on there and any questions, but Farouk's posted one up, which is brilliant. So keep your questions coming for Jonathan. We've got a little bit more time here still. Farouk says, how the leader should plan to keep the team to sustain the small business. So that is a big subject, obviously, but any insights there, Jonathan? How should a leader plan to keep the team in order to sustain your small business? So many things you can add, I'm sure, and many things you probably covered in your brilliant podcast series over the last 80 plus episodes that probably touch on this, but maybe a couple of things that you've got to add to would be great.
Yeah, teams. I think it's all about added value and checking with each member of your team this very candid question: where do you add value? And often they say, well, I do this job. I say that wasn't the question I asked you. Where do you add value? Where do you add value for the organization? But more importantly, where do you add value for our customers and our clients? And they go, well, but I do this job. I said, okay, so you clearly don't know where you add value. If you could add a lot of value, where would you add it? Oh, I'd be doing this. So who's doing that? Well, no one's doing that. Well, look, start doing that and stop doing this because it's clearly not adding value. So checking with people that they've got an understanding of the purpose of the organization in this small team that you have, where they add value. And I find 1 to 2 hour team sessions I do with a lot of different organizations. I work with about, I don't know, a variety of different organizations. And the team sessions are the most powerful, where people are heard and the skills of listening. I've got a great book, Deep Listening, by my friend Oscar Trimboli. And it's just a small book, but the skill of listening, only 2% of us have been trained to listen. 50% of us have been trained in communicating, talking, but who really listens well? So if you're going to create a great team, really listen, understand what drives and motivates each of them, where they add value, and where they get the connection to your sense of purpose. Then that team can help your business thrive and it can help your customers. Great question. Thanks, Farouk.
Thanks, Farouk. Yeah, and on the subject of listening, then even more reason to listen to Jonathan's podcast, because that is through the medium of audio, which is all about listening. A question that's come through as well. When did you talked about, and I know you mentioned this earlier in one of the slides about meaning and purpose, and there's a Mark Twain quote. When did you find your purpose?
Great question. So it's a whole story behind it, but the shortened version of it, I was lucky enough to be selected to be an instructor at the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, what some would call the sort of Top Gun of the British Army, where supposedly the best officers get chosen from their regiments to go and represent them and train the next generation of future leaders. So I was terribly cocky and pleased with myself for having been chosen to go there. And I got my first annual report, and it said I was average. Like, what on earth? I mean, like, I've always been outstanding. How can I suddenly be average? And I'm at the best place for the best officers, and I'm average. The point was, I was average in comparison to my peers, and the others were better than me. And that moment of crisis, where I thought, I've got to learn about being a good leader, was when I reached back to find out about the man I never knew, my father, who was a fast jet pilot in the Fleet Air Arm in the Royal Navy, who died saving the lives of 2 others. Now, I didn't know much about my father, so I wrote to the Navy and said, anybody knew Commander Paul Perks killed in Changi 1964, would they write to his son, Jonathan, who wants to know more about the man he never knew? I got lovely letters all about him, what an inspiring leader he was, which is why I'm doing this series now and why I'm talking with Alex now, is because my father was an inspiring leader, as was my mother, who was a philanthropist and did things for others when she had so little herself. We grew up with very little money. But I invited those officers who'd replied to me about my father to come and have lunch with me at the Military Academy Sandhurst. We're having lunch, and one of them says, Jonathan, your father bought my ticket. I said, what do you mean? He said, your father died in my aeroplane. He was test flying my aeroplane to make sure it was safe for me, and it killed him. And the other guy, Commander Bill White, to his side said, Jonathan, you have a choice here. You can be a victim. Poor me. My father was killed when I was 3. Mother brought up, age 35, 3 boys on her own. Life is difficult, not fair. Me, poor me, victim. Or you can find inspiring leaders, you can learn from them, and you can pass on their tips and techniques to others, which is why I do this free podcast and share as much as I can abundantly of all the information I learned with you and with others. So that's the day I found my why.
It's a great story. It's a great story, and one which I did know, but I thought I'd let you answer it there, Jonathan. So we've probably got time for let me just check last couple of questions. So maybe as well for people. So easiest way, and I know the answer to this, of course, but I'll let you say easiest way people can find out more. I've just posted up your website there, Jonathan, jonathanperks.com. So your podcast, Inspiring Leadership with Jonathan Bowman-Perks, MBE, can be found where exactly, sir?
So the podcasts, they're on Apple and they're on Spotify. They're also on YouTube. If you just type in my name, Jonathan Bowman-Perks, and the words Inspiring Leadership on YouTube, you'll see there's about 180 different videos with all these different leaders. I've learned so much from them, but also 1 or 2 of the lessons that I've learned over the last 40 years from both in the military, but also from being a managing director of a PLC myself, and of coaching other leaders and family office and people on the way up. So it's all on there. The material's there. Fill your boots. And if it's of any interest to you, reach out and let's have a conversation.
And tell us about, again, link, so YouTube channel as well, which you do every week. And tell us a little bit more about the LinkedIn, because I'd imagine a number of our listeners today, watchers, are going to be on LinkedIn, are going to be small business owners. When do you go live on there, Jonathan?
Yeah, so I post up an invitation to the event and tell about the event that Ben Atkinson and myself, so connect with me and connect with Ben Atkinson, he's in LinkedIn, and we jointly host it. It's at 5 o'clock on a Tuesday, every Tuesday. And I'm just looking at the upcoming ones we've got. We've just done Nick Hine, who was an employment lawyer. That was very interesting. Josh Graff, who's LinkedIn VP Marketing Solutions. And he's going to be talking about diversity as well, and Stonewall and various interesting things. That'd be fascinating. Paul Cooper, who's an entrepreneur, investor, and a board advisor. He's on the 15th of September. Philippa Snare, now she's fascinating. She's the senior vice president, the boss really, of the trade desk and all that marketing and branding, a very successful organization. She was CMO at Microsoft and also at Facebook. So very interesting lady. Tony Danker, the CEO of the CBI, or Be the Business, as it's called. Anna Baird, the head of culture and innovation and customer success at Google, and Simon Brewer, the CEO of Vantage Investment Advisory Limited, and possibly even Pano Christou, the CEO of Pret a Manger. So there's a good bunch of people coming every week, and it's a live session, a bit like this, where people can fire in questions. So please come and join us. You'll find it on my LinkedIn profile. So just follow me on LinkedIn, and you'll see when it comes up about the event.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And as you know, I've been following your progress with your podcast with interest. We've literally I've seen top 10s in Hong Kong, Luxembourg, Italy, all in the last month alone. And that's only when I've literally had the time to have a quick look. So follow that.
Yeah, well, I really got to take my hat off to you. You trained me, you developed me, you really brought me on, and doing your course was really useful. And I do recommend to those listening, if you haven't been trained by Alex in doing podcasting and the value that it can bring, get on there and do it, guys, because technology is the way ahead. This is just one of the many mediums that you need. And you are very skillful at it, Alex, and people are lucky like me to have your help.
Thanks. Yeah, I think everyone who's a small business owner, some way, shape or form, you need to be documenting what you do, as Jonathan's doing, sharing, his stories and now giving his platform and making that available for some of these amazing leaders, both in the military and in business, giving them his platform to share their stories and tell their stories and hopefully inspire more people. Last question then is, I'll put this to you, Jonathan. So somebody's asked, I think again, it was one of the slides you had before with regards to any tips on encouraging people to actually do something because they want to do it, not just because you want them to do it yourself.
So encouraging somebody else to do what they want to do because they want to do it.
Trying to get them to own it, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it also is the fact that it's not, if I want your opinion, I'll give it to you, which many leaders have. They actually need to understand the person who works with them. What is it that drives and motivates them? I find I use some of the psychometrics, which are very helpful. Teaches a lot about what drives and motivates people, but also really get under the skin of why they do what they do and what is it that motivates them. And if you know what motivates them, it will not be a problem. But too many people never bother to find out. They just think that they're a mini version of them, and they're not. They're very different. Yeah,
good. And I know most people are going to be watching this on the replay, since people have headed back to work, even though that is from home for the vast majority. So those who are watching the replay, the most common question I get asked is, when is the replay available? So the replay will be available as soon as I press end broadcast. For more information, I've posted up jonathanperks.com, and also you can email jp@jonathanperks.com. And as the slide shows you there as well, Jonathan has top tips for inspiring leaders that you can read on Amazon or listen to on Audible as well. And to jump into his series, which is approaching 100 episodes, as we say, simply go to wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, etc., and search for Inspiring Leadership by Jonathan Bowman-Perks, MBA. Anything else you'd like to add to that, Jonathan, before we go? And I appreciate your time at your busy day, as always here.
I think the final thing I'd leave people with is a great book is The Daily Stoic. And it allows you each day, I read my chapter this morning, the tips about life and whatever problems are thrown at us. And the fact you've got to control the controllables, and other things are outside of control, let them go. But your attitude will define your altitude. So sort out your attitude, and that will get you through many a tough situation. And I just wish you all every success. And please, as I say, reach out. If I can be of help to you and your organization, get in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. I've posted up every way, shape or form. You can get in touch with Jonathan there. So please do, folks. Again, thank you for joining us this morning for the first live webinar of today. Next up at 12 p.m, I have got Emma Shelton with the top 10 mindset shifts for business success. That's at 12 p.m. on here. If you haven't registered, simply go to festivalofenterprise.co.uk and register for this afternoon's webinar at 12 p.m. from Emma Shenton from Oakwood. So once again, Jonathan, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us today for this. Again, if you would like this yourself, Jonathan, let me know and I can download the video for you.
Yeah, please do send it to me and I'll post it on LinkedIn. Thanks, mate. Brilliant.
Okay. Thanks, Farouk and Nigel, everybody else who asked the questions via the private channels as well here. And those of you who've been watching, I've just had a quick look. We're live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well. So Farouk says, very informative. Nigel says, thank you. So thank you all very much indeed. Thank you, chaps and chapasses. Much appreciated indeed. Sounds like the dog's gone to sleep there, Jonathan.
Yes, he has. Thank God. Taking for a walk.
Brilliant.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Alex.
Moving.
Good being with you and your colleagues. All right. Bye now.
You too. Stay safe. Bye-bye. All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.